The starship horizon cut through the inky blackness of space, its sleek silver hull catching the distant starlight. Lieutenant Jessica Thompson stood at the primary observation deck, her fingers tracing the holographic star charts that flickered with soft blue light. This wasn't her first diplomatic mission, but something about this journey felt different. A subtle electrical charge of anticipation that made the hair on the back of her neck stand up. The Zortak homeworld was unlike anything in human galactic databases. Initial scans revealed a planet of impossible beauty, swirling azure atmospheres, continent-sized crystal formations that reflected light in prismatic cascades, and atmospheric conditions that defied standard planetary classification. Thompson had spent months studying their cultural archives, but nothing could prepare her for the reality that awaited. Her communication specialist, Michael Rodriguez, interrupted her thoughts. "Lieutenant, we're receiving final approach protocols from the Zortak diplomatic hub. Their communication patterns are unusual." Unusual was an understatement. The Zortak communicated through a complex system of bioluminescent patterns, musical harmonics, and electromagnetic pulses that human translators struggled to fully comprehend. Where most species relied on direct verbal or digital communication, the Zortak created entire conversations through intricate light displays and harmonic resonances. As the horizon began its descent, Thompson adjusted her diplomatic uniform, a carefully designed ensemble that incorporated adaptive materials capable of responding to various environmental and cultural protocols. The suit itself was a marvel of human engineering, capable of subtle color shifts, temperature regulation, and embedded communication technologies. The landing was smooth, almost too smooth. No mechanical thrusters, no typical spacecraft descent. Instead, the ship seemed to glide, held by some invisible planetary embrace. Thompson knew the physics behind a landing, but it still felt like magic. Quantum field generators and adaptive gravitational compensators made the impossible seem effortless. "Preliminary atmosphere is breathable," Rodriguez reported. "But we're detecting some unusual electromagnetic interference. Nothing dangerous, just complex." Thompson smiled. Complex was the perfect word to describe the Zortak. Their civilization existed in a state that human researchers had trouble categorizing. Not quite organic, not purely technological, they represented a form of existence that challenged everything humans understood about life and intelligence. The diplomatic reception hall was a masterpiece of living architecture. Walls that seemed to breathe, surfaces that changed color and texture with each passing moment, floors that responded to movement with subtle musical tones. It was both a communication space and a living organism. Ambassador Krell approached, a being that defied simple description. Tall and elegantly structured, with skin that shifted between translucent blues and deep crystalline greens. Multiple sensory appendages moved with a grace that suggested intelligence far beyond human comprehension. When Krell spoke, it was not through a mouth, but through a complex series of light pulses and harmonic vibrations that the universal translator struggled to interpret. "Welcome, human representatives," the translation device finally managed. "Your journey has been observed with great curiosity." Thompson stepped forward, her training kicking in. But before she could deliver her carefully prepared diplomatic greeting, something unexpected happened. A minor miscalculation in her suit's adaptive protocols caused a sudden color shift, a vibrant red that, in Zortak culture, was a deeply personal and vulnerable expression. What should have been a diplomatic faux pas became something extraordinary. Krell's response was not confusion or offense, but a cascade of light and sound that the translator interpreted as profound emotional resonance. The entire reception hall seemed to react, walls pulsing with complementary colors, floor tones creating a complex musical landscape that spoke of connection, understanding, and something deeper than mere diplomatic protocol. In that single moment, Jessica Thompson realized this mission was going to be far more than a standard first contact scenario. The Zortak were not just another alien species to be studied or negotiated with. They were a civilization that would fundamentally challenge human understanding of communication, intelligence, and connection. Rodriguez leaned close, whispering, "What just happened?" Thompson didn't take her eyes off Ambassador Krell. "Something remarkable," she responded, her voice filled with a mix of professional excitement and something more, a sense that the universe had just revealed one of its most beautiful secrets. The diplomatic mission had begun, but nothing would proceed as anyone had expected. The intelligence briefing room was a study in controlled tension. Holographic displays flickered with star charts, trajectory simulations, and devastating historical records. Lieutenant Jessica Thompson stood before her team, her fingers dancing across the primary display as she highlighted the most recent data on the Vornex migration patterns. "This is not just another potential threat," she began, her voice cutting through the ambient hum of communication equipment. "This is systematic galactic elimination." The primary screen showed a haunting visualization. Star systems reduced to cosmic debris, entire planetary networks erased with surgical precision. Where other civilizations saw random destruction, Thompson saw a terrifyingly methodical approach to conquest. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, the team's lead archaeologist, brought up additional historical records. "The Vornex have been doing this for centuries," she explained, her voice a mixture of professional detachment and barely contained horror. "They don't just conquer, they completely erase civilizations." The methodology was chilling in its efficiency. The Vornex didn't simply defeat their targets, they dismantled them completely. Planetary infrastructures were systematically broken down, cultural archives obliterated, and technological systems completely neutralized. What couldn't be used was destroyed. What could be used was repurposed, and what remained was scattered across the cosmic void. Michael Chen, the team's primary communication and strategic analysis expert, highlighted a series of intercepted communication fragments. "Look at the pattern," he said, zooming in on a complex grid of stellar movements. "They're not random. There's a specific methodology to their expansion." Thompson understood immediately. The Vornex didn't conquer out of traditional motivations like resource acquisition or territorial expansion. Their approach was something far more fundamental, a form of galactic pruning that suggested a civilization-level philosophy of elimination. "The Zortak are next," Thompson stated flatly. The room went silent. Their homeworld represented everything the Vornex would find both fascinating and threatening. A civilization built on complex communication systems, with technological approaches that defied traditional understanding. The Zortak weren't just a potential target. They were a perfect case study in the type of civilization the Vornex systematically eliminated. Dr. Rodriguez pulled up additional archaeological data. "We've tracked similar attack patterns across 23 known civilizations. The Vornex approach is always the same. First, they gather intelligence. Then they neutralize communication systems. Then complete systemic elimination." The methodology was almost scientific in its precision. Satellite tracking, communication interception, strategic weakness identification. Each step was calculated with mathematical accuracy. The Vornex didn't just attack. They dismantled entire civilizational ecosystems with the precision of a surgeon removing a tumor. Thompson zoomed out on the galactic map. The red markers representing Vornex attack zones created a terrifying constellation of destruction. Entire sectors had been systematically cleared, with mathematical precision that suggested something beyond simple biological imperatives. "They're not just a threat," Michael Chen observed. "They're a galactic cleanup mechanism." The implications were profound. This wasn't conquest in any traditional sense. The Vornex operated like a massive galaxy-wide cleaning system, identifying civilizations that didn't meet some unknown standard and systematically removing them. "We have approximately 6 standard planetary cycles before they reach Zortak territory," Thompson said, her voice steady. The team understood what remained unspoken. They were looking at a potential genocide of unprecedented scale. The communication systems began to light up. Encrypted channels from various human diplomatic and military departments started streaming in. Each new piece of intelligence painted a more complex picture of the approaching threat. Dr. Rodriguez identified something unusual in the latest data stream. "Their approach is changing," she muttered, fingers flying across the display. "They're adapting their strategy. Something is different this time." Thompson leaned in, her eyes catching a subtle shift in the tracking patterns. The Vornex weren't just moving. They were evolving their approach. Whatever had worked in previous galactic sectors was being refined, modified, prepared for a new type of target. The Zortak weren't just another civilization to be eliminated. They represented something different, a civilization that challenged fundamental understanding of communication, technology, and existence. And humanity had decided they would not become another statistical marker in the Vornex's systematic elimination process. "We need a plan," Thompson said quietly. But it wasn't a request. It was a declaration of intent. The hunt was about to begin. The Communication Development Center looked more like an artist's studio than a military installation. Holographic displays cascaded with impossible complexity. Quantum processors hummed with barely contained energy, and at the center of it all sat Lieutenant Jessica Thompson, surrounded by the most brilliant communication specialists humanity had ever assembled. "This isn't a message," she explained to her team. "This is a statement." The challenge was unprecedented. How do you communicate a warning to a species that views communication as a form of warfare? The Vornex understood language as a tool of conquest, not connection. Their communication protocols were built on hierarchical dominance, each transmission a potential vector for infiltration or destruction. Michael Chen, the team's lead communication architect, had been working for weeks on a solution that defied traditional diplomatic approaches. "We're going to speak their language," he said, by completely rewriting the rules of communication. The message would be a multi-layered masterpiece of technological and cultural communication. Not just words, but a comprehensive demonstration of human capability that would transcend traditional communication methods. Dr. Elena Rodriguez brought up a complex holographic model of communication layers. "We're embedding multiple levels of information," she explained. "Each layer is a different type of communication: technological, cultural, psychological, mathematical." The first layer was pure mathematics, a series of complex quantum algorithms that would demonstrate humanity's technological capabilities. But it wasn't just a display of power. Each mathematical sequence was carefully constructed to reveal something deeper about human problem-solving and creative thinking. The second layer was cultural. Embedded within the mathematical sequences were subtle references to human art, music, and philosophical concepts. Fragments of Shakespeare intertwined with quantum equations. Musical compositions by Bach were translated into mathematical patterns. Scientific discoveries were presented as artistic expressions. "They'll understand that we're not just sending a warning," Thompson said. "We're presenting a comprehensive view of our civilization." The communication team worked with a precision that bordered on artistic creation. Each element was carefully selected, each sequence meticulously designed. This was more than a diplomatic message. It was a portrait of humanity encoded in the fundamental language of the universe. Dr. Rodriguez highlighted a particularly complex section. "See this sequence. It's a mathematical representation of human empathy. We're literally showing them how we process emotional connection through pure mathematical logic." The third layer was a direct warning, but not in any traditional sense. It was a comprehensive demonstration of humanity's technological capabilities, subtle hints at defensive and communication technologies that suggested capabilities far beyond what the Vornex could comprehend. "We're going to make them understand," Thompson said, "that attacking the Zortak means facing something they cannot predict." Michael Chen's fingers danced across the holographic interface. Quantum communication protocols were being woven into a message that was simultaneously a warning, a cultural presentation, and a mathematical symphony. Each transmission would be a work of art, a communication so complex that it would challenge the very concept of interstellar messaging. The final touch was brilliant in its subtlety. Embedded within the message were adaptive communication protocols that would shift and change based on how the Vornex attempted to analyze or decode the transmission. It was a communication that was alive, evolving, impossible to fully comprehend. "They're used to linear communication," Thompson observed. "We're giving them a multidimensional conversation." As the final sequences were compiled, the communications center fell into a hushed anticipation. This was more than a diplomatic message. This was humanity's first comprehensive statement to a potentially hostile galactic civilization. Dr. Rodriguez looked up, a smile playing across her lips. "They won't just receive a warning," she said. "They'll receive an invitation to understand something completely new." The transmission preparation was complete. A message that was simultaneously a mathematical theorem, a cultural archive, a technological demonstration, and a warning unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Lieutenant Thompson gave the final command. "Send." The universe held its breath. The first Vornex probe squadron emerged from subspace with predatory precision. Sleek vessels of obsidian and silver, they moved like a swarm of metallic predators, each ship an extension of a collective consciousness that had dismantled countless civilizations. Lieutenant Jessica Thompson watched the incoming data streams with calculated calm. Her team had prepared for this moment, but the reality was still breathtaking. The Vornex weren't just sending a test, they were launching a carefully orchestrated probe designed to expose what they believed was a human bluff. "Incoming transmission," Michael Chen called out, his fingers dancing across the holographic interface. "They're using a standard infiltration protocol, definitely testing our defenses." The communication was a masterpiece of psychological warfare. Encoded within the transmission were subtle probing algorithms, digital tendrils designed to explore the edges of human defensive capabilities. Most species would have responded with either total defensive lockdown or panicked counterattack. Humanity had something entirely different in mind. Dr. Elena Rodriguez pulled up a complex visualization of the incoming signal. "Look at the communication structure," she said, her voice a mixture of professional excitement and scientific fascination. "It's not just a message. It's a complete systems reconnaissance." The Vornex believed they were gathering intelligence. In reality, they were walking into an elaborate trap. Thompson's team had prepared a response that was neither defense nor attack, something so fundamentally different that it would challenge the Vornex's entire understanding of conflict. Each of the incoming probe ships would encounter a technological ecosystem designed to do something unprecedented. "Initiate adaptive response protocol," Thompson commanded. The first probe approached the designated observation zone, a carefully prepared region of space that looked, to all external sensors, like a vulnerable point in human defensive networks. It was a perfect target, seemingly unprotected and ripe for infiltration. What happened next defied every standard of space warfare. As the probe began its initial scanning sequence, the surrounding space began to change. Not through weapons or traditional defensive systems, but through a complete reimagining of spatial dynamics. Quantum field generators created localized reality shifts that made traditional navigation impossible. The probe's navigation systems became confused. Not destroyed, simply transformed. Michael Chen watched the incoming data with a look of professional satisfaction. "We're not blocking their communication," he explained to the team. "We're having a conversation they don't understand." Each of the Vornex ships encountered a different technological scenario. One found its communication systems gradually translating into complex musical compositions. Another discovered its navigation protocols slowly transforming into intricate mathematical poems. A third saw its weapon systems generating elaborate artistic visualizations. It wasn't an attack. It was a comprehensive demonstration of technological superiority that went beyond simple destruction. Dr. Rodriguez highlighted a particularly fascinating data stream. "We're essentially teaching them a new language of interaction," she said. "Every attempt to probe our defenses is being transformed into a learning experience." The Vornex probe squadron, designed for swift and brutal reconnaissance, found themselves completely neutralized, not through violence, but through a form of technological jujitsu that redirected their own energy. They expected a fortress, Thompson muttered. We've given them a living, breathing ecosystem. By the mission's end, not a single Vornex ship had been destroyed. Instead, they drifted in space, each vessel a silent monument to a completely unexpected form of technological interaction. Their systems were intact but fundamentally altered, their mission of reconnaissance transformed into an unexpected educational experience. The bridge of the Human Command Center erupted in quiet celebration. This wasn't just a defensive action. It was a comprehensive reimagining of conflict resolution. Lieutenant Thompson allowed herself a small smile. The message was clear. Humanity would protect its allies, but not through the language of destruction. Prepare the full report, she told her team. The galaxy is about to learn something new about conflict. The provocation had been answered, not with weapons, but with an entirely new understanding of interaction. The aftermath of the probe encounter transformed the Human Communications Center into a laboratory of unprecedented possibility. Each Vornex ship became a canvas of technological marvel, a testament to humanity's ability to reshape conflict into something beyond comprehension. Lieutenant Jessica Thompson stood before a massive holographic display, watching the intricate transformations of the captured probe vessels. This isn't about defeating an enemy, she told her team. This is about rewriting the fundamental language of conflict. Dr. Elena Rodriguez approached with a data tablet, her eyes sparkling with scientific excitement. The quantum interference patterns are unlike anything we've ever seen, she explained. We're not just disrupting their systems, we're teaching them an entirely new way of existing. The first probe had undergone a complete metamorphosis. Its weapon systems now generated complex holographic art installations, three-dimensional representations of mathematical concepts that danced with impossible beauty. Where once there were targeting mechanisms, now existed living mathematical sculptures that shifted and breathed with algorithmic life. Michael Chen pulled up a detailed systems analysis. Watch this, he said, highlighting a series of data streams. We've essentially converted their entire communication network into a learning system. Each ship's communication array had been transformed into a dynamic knowledge network. Vornex algorithms designed for infiltration and destruction were now processing vast libraries of human cultural and scientific knowledge. Mathematical theorems danced with musical compositions. Quantum physics intertwined with philosophical concepts. They came to destroy, Thompson observed, and instead, they're learning. The second probe presented an even more remarkable transformation. Its energy systems had been subtly recalibrated, converting destructive potential into generative power. Weapons designed to obliterate now created intricate energy patterns that could potentially solve complex environmental challenges. Dr. Rodriguez highlighted a particularly fascinating section of the analysis. Look at how the ship's core systems are responding, she said. It's not just a technological conversion. It's a fundamental reimagining of purpose. The ship's navigation systems had become a living cartography project. Instead of tracking potential invasion routes, they now mapped cultural connections, scientific discoveries, and potential points of mutual understanding. Each coordinate became a point of potential communication rather than conquest. We're not just defending, Thompson explained to her team. We're demonstrating an entirely different approach to existence. The third probe underwent perhaps the most remarkable transformation. Its entire technological infrastructure had been converted into a massive, distributed learning system. Algorithms designed for destruction now processed complex problems. Climate change simulations, medical research challenges, philosophical thought experiments. Michael Chen brought up a visualization that took the team's breath away. They're solving problems, he said quietly. Problems they were never designed to solve. Each ship became a living testament to humanity's approach. Not destruction, not conquest, but transformation. The technological recalibration went beyond simple defensive measures. It was a comprehensive demonstration of a fundamental philosophical approach. That technology could be a tool of understanding rather than elimination. The Vornex came looking for weakness, Thompson said. Instead, they found something they cannot comprehend. Dr. Rodriguez added a critical observation. They're learning that technological superiority isn't about destruction. It's about adaptation, understanding, growth. The probe vessels now drifted in a carefully maintained observation zone, each one a silent university of unexpected knowledge. Their weapons had become art installations. Their communication systems were now distributed learning networks. Their navigation arrays mapped points of potential connection. As the analysis continued, the human team realized they had done something unprecedented. They hadn't just defended against a potential threat. They had transformed the very concept of technological conflict. Prepare a comprehensive report, Thompson instructed her team. The galaxy is about to learn something new about technological interaction. The ships continued their silent drift, each one a living demonstration that technology could be a bridge rather than a barrier. Destruction had been answered with creation. Conflict had been transformed into connection. The communication networks of the galaxy erupted in a symphony of confusion, wonder, and unprecedented speculation. News of the human intervention spread faster than light, carried by quantum communication channels, diplomatic relays, and the rapid-fire gossip of 1,000 different civilizations. Lieutenant Jessica Thompson watched the initial reports cascade across the holographic displays. Each transmission told a different story, but the core message remained consistent. Something fundamental had changed. It's not just about what we did, Dr. Elena Rodriguez observed, studying the incoming data streams. It's about how we did it. The Zortak diplomatic channels were the first to broadcast a comprehensive analysis. Their unique communication systems, part biological, part technological, translated the human intervention into a complex narrative that defied traditional understanding. Where other species saw a military encounter, the Zortak perceived a profound cultural performance. Michael Chen pulled up a visualization of communication patterns. Look at how different species are interpreting the event, he said. It's like watching a single event through 1,000 different prisms. The Mechanical Concordance, a collection of silicon-based civilizations known for their rigid technological approach, struggled to comprehend the human action. Their communication networks buzzed with complex algorithmic debates. How could a defensive action be simultaneously a nonviolent intervention? Smaller, more vulnerable civilizations saw something entirely different. They saw hope. Reports began to stream in from dozens of previously isolated star systems. Species that had lived in constant fear of galactic predators now looked to humanity with a mixture of curiosity and desperate hope. The Vornex had been a shadow that had haunted galactic civilization for centuries. Humanity had done something unprecedented. They had challenged that shadow without firing a single traditional weapon. We're not just protecting the Zortak, Thompson told her team. We're changing the entire narrative of galactic interaction. The diplomatic channels became a living ecosystem of interpretation. Some saw it as a technological miracle. Others perceived it as a profound philosophical statement. A few advanced civilizations recognized it as something far more complex, a complete reimagining of conflict resolution. Dr. Rodriguez highlighted a particularly fascinating communication from a crystalline species known for their complex mathematical communication. They're seeing our intervention as a form of advanced mathematical poetry, she explained, her voice a mixture of professional excitement and scientific wonder. The Vornex, typically masters of information control, found themselves in an unprecedented situation. Their attempts to control the narrative were systematically undermined by the very nature of the human intervention. Each attempt to shape the story only revealed more about their own limitations. Michael Chen brought up a comprehensive communication analysis. We're not just changing how civilizations see conflict, he observed. We're changing how they understand communication itself. Diplomatic requests began to flood human communication networks. Smaller civilizations, long terrified of potential conquest, now saw humanity as something entirely new. Not a potential threat, but a possible protector. Not a conquering force, but a potential ally. The Zortak diplomatic channels became a central hub of this new narrative. Ambassador Krell's communications were particularly fascinating, a complex blend of gratitude, scientific fascination, and a profound recognition of a fundamental shift in galactic dynamics. Humanity has done something unprecedented, Krell's communication translated. You have transformed conflict from a destructive act into a communicative performance. Thompson understood the deeper implications. This was more than a defensive action. This was a comprehensive demonstration of a fundamentally different approach to existence. The galactic communication networks continued their complex dance. Each transmission, each analysis, each interpretation added another layer to a story that was still unfolding. Humanity had not just defended an ally. They had introduced a completely new language of interaction. Prepare a comprehensive diplomatic response, Thompson instructed her team. But make it clear, this is just the beginning. The galaxy watched, listened, and began to understand something profound. Conflict could be a conversation. Protection could be an art form. And humanity was writing an entirely new chapter of galactic interaction. The Interstellar Diplomatic Conference Hall was a marvel of architectural complexity. Floating platforms of crystalline materials hosted representatives from hundreds of galactic civilizations, each delegation a unique ecosystem of communication and cultural expression. At the center of it all sat Lieutenant Jessica Thompson, humanity's primary representative, surrounded by a carefully selected team that represented the most nuanced diplomatic minds of her species. The Vornex delegation arrived with a facade of calculated composure. Their representatives were biomechanical constructs, part organic, part technological, designed to project an image of absolute control. But something was different. The subtle shifts in their communication patterns betrayed an underlying uncertainty that had never been present before. We request a formal explanation, the lead Vornex representative began, its voice a complex modulation of electronic tones and biological resonances. Regarding the recent interdiction of our reconnaissance mission, Thompson knew this was more than a simple diplomatic inquiry. This was a comprehensive attempt to understand an encounter that defied every standard of galactic conflict. Dr. Elena Rodriguez sat beside her, a holographic display dancing with complex communication algorithms. They're not just asking for an explanation, she whispered. They're trying to deconstruct our entire approach to interaction. Michael Chen had prepared an extensive presentation, not a defense, but a comprehensive demonstration of human philosophical and technological approach. Each slide was a carefully crafted narrative that went beyond simple diplomatic language. The first presentation layer focused on the technological transformation of the Vornex probes. Raw data visualizations showed how each ship had been converted from a weapon of destruction into a distributed learning network. Mathematical representations danced alongside cultural artifacts, creating a holographic symphony of human approach. We did not disable your vessels, Thompson explained. We expanded their potential. The Vornex delegation went silent. This was not the response of a defensive species. This was something entirely unprecedented. Dr. Rodriguez presented the next layer, a comprehensive analysis of the communication protocols used during the encounter. Where traditional diplomatic exchanges were linear and hierarchical, the human approach was multidimensional. Each communication was simultaneously a warning, an invitation, and a learning experience. Your reconnaissance was an opportunity for mutual understanding, Thompson continued, not a threat to be eliminated. The smaller civilizations watching the transmission leaned in. This was more than a diplomatic meeting. This was a fundamental reimagining of interstellar interaction. Michael Chen brought up a visualization that took the entire conference hall's breath away. A comprehensive mapping of how the Vornex probe systems had been transformed. Weapon algorithms now solving complex medical research challenges. Navigation systems creating intricate cultural connection maps. The Vornex delegation's communication patterns began to destabilize. Not from anger, but from a profound cognitive dissonance. Their entire approach to galactic interaction was being systematically deconstructed. "We have identified your technological vulnerabilities," the lead representative attempted. Thompson smiled. "We have offered you an opportunity for growth." The diplomatic hall became a living visualization of a paradigm shift. Smaller civilizations watched with a mixture of hope and fascination. The Vornex, masters of galactic elimination for centuries, found themselves in an unprecedented position, being taught rather than conquered. Dr. Rodriguez highlighted a critical point. "Your technologies were not destroyed," she explained. "They were transformed, given a new purpose." The Vornex communication systems struggled to process this approach. Their entire civilization was built on a model of technological superiority through elimination. Humanity was presenting a completely different model: technological superiority through expansion and understanding. "We invite further communication," Thompson stated, "not as a diplomatic pleasantry, but as a genuine philosophical offering." The conference hall became a crucible of potential transformation. The Vornex delegation's communication patterns began to show subtle changes, almost imperceptible shifts that suggested something profound was happening. They were learning. Michael Chen leaned close to Thompson. "We're not just changing how they see us," he whispered. "We're changing how they see themselves." The diplomatic consequences went far beyond a single encounter. This was a comprehensive challenge to the fundamental approach of galactic interaction. Humanity had entered the galactic stage, not as conquerors, not as defenders, but as something entirely new. A civilization that saw conflict as an opportunity for mutual growth. The Vornex representative's final communication was not a response. It was a beginning. The stars seemed to hold their breath. Lieutenant Jessica Thompson stood on the observation deck of the diplomatic station, watching the intricate dance of civilizations that had begun to form in the wake of humanity's unprecedented intervention. Ambassador Krell of the Zortak approached, their bioluminescent patterns creating a complex narrative of emotional and intellectual resonance. Where once communication would have required extensive translation, now there was a profound understanding that transcended traditional language. "You have changed everything." Krell's communication translated, a mixture of wonder and deep philosophical appreciation. Thompson understood the weight of those words. This was more than a single diplomatic victory. This was a fundamental reimagining of galactic interaction. The transformation had begun subtly. Smaller civilizations that had lived in fear for generations now looked to the emerging galactic community with newfound hope. The Vornex, once seen as an unstoppable force of elimination, had begun a profound process of self-examination. Dr. Elena Rodriguez compiled the initial research findings. The technological and cultural exchanges that had emerged from the initial encounter were unprecedented. Vornex research networks now collaborated with civilizations they had previously targeted. Communication protocols that were once designed for infiltration now served as bridges of understanding. Michael Chen brought up a holographic display showing the expanding network of galactic connections. "It's not just about protection," he explained to Thompson. "It's about creating a living, breathing ecosystem of mutual understanding." The diplomatic stations had become more than meeting places. They were now living laboratories of cultural and technological exchange. Where once there were rigid boundaries between civilizations, now there were fluid conversations, collaborative research projects, and shared explorations of knowledge. The Zortak played a crucial role in this new paradigm. Their unique communication systems, part biological, part technological, became a model for interspecies understanding. They demonstrated how communication could be a form of connection far beyond simple information exchange. Thompson reflected on the journey. Humanity had entered the galactic stage, not as conquerors, not as defenders, but as facilitators of a new type of existence. They had shown that protection was not about building walls, but about creating connections. Ambassador Krell shared a complex communication that mapped the philosophical journey. The visualization was breathtaking, a three-dimensional representation of how a single intervention could reshape entire civilizational understanding. "We did not just defend," Thompson explained to her team. We demonstrated a different approach to existence. The research teams continued to explore the profound implications. The Vornex technological systems, once designed for elimination, were now being repurposed. Research networks that had previously mapped potential conquest now explored potential collaboration. Smaller civilizations began to emerge from centuries of isolation. The fear that had kept them hidden now transformed into a curiosity about potential connections. The galactic community was no longer defined by potential threats, but by potential collaborations. Dr. Rodriguez highlighted a critical observation. "We're not just changing how civilizations interact," she said. "We're changing the fundamental understanding of what civilization means." The diplomatic stations became living ecosystems of exchange. Cultural artifacts, scientific discoveries, philosophical concepts, all became part of a massive interconnected network of understanding. Where once there were boundaries, now there were bridges. Michael Chen brought up a visualization that took everyone's breath away. A comprehensive map of galactic connections, each point of contact a potential point of mutual growth. The network was alive, dynamic, constantly evolving. Thompson understood the deeper implication. This was more than a diplomatic victory. This was a new way of existing. Ambassador Krell's final communication captured the essence of this transformation. Humanity has shown us that protection is not about preventing destruction. The translation read, "It is about creating something greater than ourselves." The stars continued their silent dance, but something had changed. The galaxy was no longer a place of potential conflict. It had become a living, breathing ecosystem of mutual understanding. Humanity had not conquered. They had connected. And in that connection, everything was possible.